let's look at some specifics here. Something that most people can identify with. Time has personal levels. It can the Vedic text in Sanskrit and Tamil talk about time being operating at a body level, and at a personal consciousness level, and at a group level. And I think we can even use that concept of breaking it down and being reductionist to think about time in a different way and prove to ourselves that we experience time so differently from moment to moment to moment that the pressure cannot be ubiquitously applied throughout the universe, and therefore is brought in the aggregate, the sum of all of the little bazillions of little bloops coming into existence creates the overall morass of time, the overall sea of time. It's not really a river in that sense. It's more of an ocean where we're all of our atoms are contributing to the general ocean effect. And the ocean is just sort of milling around, and that our perception within that ocean is the subjective part of time. But all of time is subjective from the point of view of consciousness. And we can prove this to ourselves because without clocks regulating time and even then we can prove that all clocks don't count the same size of ticks in between, and so a second or a clock tick is not necessarily the same duration from one to the next. But anyway, think about it this way. It's 3 a.m. in the morning. It's in the middle of winter. It's dark. Sunrise is at where you're in a northern latitude, and sunrise is at like 8:30. That 3 a.m. in the morning is going to feel to you different than 3 a.m. in the morning in summer with sunrise at 5. If you've ever been up at 3 a.m. for whatever reason, and you've experienced it across a season, you'll know that there's a difference in the feeling of those particular times, even though the time is technically the same. It's 3 a.m. in both instances. 3 p.m. also. It's also going to feel different seasonally. 3 p.m. in the winter feels different than 3 p.m. in the summer. And this feels different is not merely your interpretation of a generalized, consistent process, but in my contention, this feels different is an inherent part of that process, and that process is subjective but also participatory, and your atoms are actually participating in the time that they are creating around you and your consciousness. So as they participate, they're going to be influenced by all the other things that you come across in life, and so your time is going to feel different from moment to moment to moment as you encounter different things. If you think about prisoners, there's an interesting effect in prisons. People don't age at the same rate when they're incarcerated. There's a lesser grade of this effect for long-term military people. They will not show body unless they've had the shit kicked out of them in wars. Individuals that are in the constrained environment, like prisons and military, where your options are constrained, and I'm talking about military where they're in bases where they're isolated for 6 and 8 months at a time, or they're on submarines. These individuals will not age the same as the general population around them. They are experiencing time differently. And it can be claimed, we can never prove it because of the nature of reality, but it could be claimed that they would age faster if they were not in that constrained environment. So it's interesting at that level. Time is actually showing a physical effect on these individuals that is different from the cohort that they had been traveling with, and that they were. And see, here's the really cool part about that. You got a guy, he's 22 years old, he's basically a doofus and an idiot, and gets himself incarcerated. Well, up until the time that he became incarcerated, he was aging at the same rate and showed all the same effects on his body as all the other 22-year-olds that were part of his cohort, all the guys he went to high school with and hung around with and so on. Now, fast forward 8 years, he gets out of incarceration. Those people are 30 that are in his cohort. And they are out, they've had a lot more experience, and their bodies will show this in terms of the effect of time on their bodies. This individual that gets out of prison, unless he's been subjected to an extreme level of experience within the prison, then will come out and look younger, may even look considerably younger. 5 or 6 years younger than the cohort. Not that prison is a way to stop aging. I'm not advocating going to prison as an anti-aging approach. I'm just saying that we experience and we demonstrate this in reality. So we can feel it, but we can also demonstrate that time is not ubiquitously applied to everything continuously. So we can also say that so that was a seasonal that I was discussing, the seasonal variation in time. And here we have another kind of variation in time, so that any given moment of time feels different depending on where you are. And of course, this is because your cells are participating in the time, putting the time out there, and then they're interacting with the time in the whole universe, the ever-present now, that we all hook into. But they're also interacting with the expression of that ever-present now with the crud that's all around you. That part of the stuff that of materium that we call our local environment. So, for instance, 3 a.m. in the morning here in the Pacific Northwest in winter is going to feel a lot different than 3 a.m. in the morning in Hawaii or, Jamaica or Moscow or Miami. And it would feel different to me if I were in all of those different places, and it's going to feel different to the people in those places than it will feel to the people that are up here. There's a lot of issues about these claims that I'm making, and you can make counterclaims that, oh, well, it's all to individual personality, etc. However, that's the whole point. Time is subjective, and we participate in it. And our emotions also participate in it. We come in and our bodies at a level that we cannot control and or even necessarily even aware contribute to the time of universe. And our bodies actually contribute to our interconnection with universe at let's just say an energetic level. And so we take in energy from into our consciousness from the materium within the nature of time, participating in time, and our emotions influence that time around us. Which, that's a strange thing to say, but it's true. And we can even demonstrate that. In fact, we've all experienced it if we think about it. So if you're old enough to have gone to more than one party or multiple parties, or you've been in multiple social situations, you are aware that there are people that are just simply downers, that they're having a bad day, and they're projecting that. It's like me. No one likes to be around me when I'm having a bad day because my emotions really leak out. And so it seriously affects everybody else around me. And that's what's going on, is that I'm actually affecting the nature of time when I'm in those grumpy, nasty moods. You get a serious sinus headache and a lot of pain, and I project that pain out. It is impacting the experience of time on those people around me. If we just thought of it as impacting the lives of the dogs I've got here. Well, these animals, when I'm in one of those moods, their experience of time is going to be that minute, hour, whatever, is going to be a lot longer than those happy times when we're out running and jumping and fighting and biting. So it's the same with humans. You got people out there that are experiencing a bad day or whatever, and they come on into your meeting. Well, they're going to influence your perception of that time. They have actually altered the time because, of course, time exists only in your perception. It's not existing out of your perception. So in other words, you could say, well, they've influenced my mood, and therefore my perception of time, but the time is the same and would be the same without them in there influencing it. And I would say that that's not the case, that your perception of time is your only experience of it, and that the little illusion presented by the tick, 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 tick of the clock is superfluous to our understanding, usually doesn't relate to it. We only occasionally really look at the buggers and ascertain what time it really is, and mostly it's only for the interconnection with other life forms, but that we all experience time subjectively and emotionally. And in fact, our emotions color the time that's around us. And so if that's the case, if I can alter the experience of others' time by how ill or well I feel, then I say that time is malleable and is subjectively malleable at that level. And so this makes a lot of sense. And in fact, if you've ever gone to a big concert and you get 50,000 people in there at one of these giant rock concerts, the time involved in there's a definitive time shift. You can be there for 5 or 6 hours, and lots of people might experience it as days and come out thoroughly exhausted. Some people may experience it as having lasted, half an hour, 20 minutes, something along those lines. Usually not that case. The combination, the aggregation of all of the people in there has to expand the time and the subjective experience of that time as well, the perception of it. So time in that sense is not only malleable, it's designable. We could design things that would alter the collective experience of time as we go along. Time, in essence, is a measurement of the span of our consciousness, a length perception. And we can also prove this to ourselves because, for instance, that 3 in the morning, when you're up, 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're up because of a toothache or a stomach ache or a broken bone or a bullet wound or any other kind of pain, you're experiencing the time at 3 a.m. then a whole lot different than if you were up at 3 a.m. Post-coital after the munchies. You're going to be experiencing time in the pain zone in this duration warping situation where your body is participating in your experience of the time, and you can say, oh well, an hour is an hour, a minute is a minute, and a second is a second. But if you've ever had severe pain, I would say that then you're one of those people that really knows that is not true. Or if you're a professional athlete and you've had to really work at time, gaining that last tenth of a second edge and stuff, you know that time perception is reality. And if you're experiencing that level of pain from body damage, those milliseconds, each of those milliseconds, as what was his name, Kabil Gibran, that said, lifetimes lived in a second, and well, you live each and every one of those seconds in a dimensional way that you're not aware of in your usual state of mind. So in that sense, time is influenced by not only your emotions but also the state of your consciousness, and that the state of your consciousness actually participates in the length of that time insofar as you can tell. And hey, that's all you've got. There's no other external real measure other than the state of your being. So let's examine other aspects of it. It's not merely the state of the pain or whatever, and time can be altered by in other ways. Time is funny because it can ripple like water, especially emotionally. And we can set up a little scenario here and we can prove that. If you're an adult and you've got children or you've got responsibilities and you're sound asleep in the middle of the night and you get a call at 3 a.m., your heart's going to jump up into your throat. It's abnormal. And from that moment on, from that minute of that phone call on, from that point, your now has changed. And everything that occurs within the now of the period of that phone call will be different than the time before the phone call occurred or after the effects of the phone call have faded. And it was a state of being. So your state of being was shocked, and you felt that shock as in your perception of the time during that phone call. If you've ever had one of those phone calls, as soon as you know what's going on, right? As soon as you know the degree of the emergency, then the time starts moderating. If, for instance, you just got to go bail out your brother-in-law because he did something stupid, well, that's a little bit different than having to get up and thrust some clothes on and rush to the hospital kind of a thing. And the impact on your body and on your perception of the time from that phone call onward will be different. And then it'll sort of fade out as ripples on a pond. There's a lot of reason that we use analogies and metaphors that are fluid and water and oceanically based to deal with time, because if we think about a river, for instance, a river is really, from our perception here in the materium, it's millions of molecules that are all influenced by gravity, all go in the same direction, the same time, in a constrained space. And this is how people have a tendency to think of time, as though there were rivers of time. And so if we wanted to apply that to the timelines, then the idea is that there would be multiple timelines, would be multiple rivers all side by side that would be going ever so slightly different. Now, the multiple timelines thing I find very interesting, because you've got doofuses out there saying that, well, you can cross from one timeline to another, or we can cross from one timeline to another. Even if that existed, even if timelines existed as separate entities in an infinitely expressing universe in infinite variation, which I dispute, just on the energetic level alone, but I dispute, then even if that were correct, the ability to cross or change from one timeline to another would require as much energy as was invested in that timeline itself.